good position
Just want
to
to
have.
have a really good
That's what I
time.
want. Good time. And there's no better time than Cafe Dostoyevsky.
No, absolutely not. You can see all the players down there
I
in the
know.
chat. I mean, look, good luck, have fun. What we get in Europe a lot is a lot of the players now, they say, have fun, but no luck.
Have fun, no luck.
But here in
If
APAC, we
anything,
still have some wholesome.
I like, I'm just going to make a quick mention. The predictions thing is really good. As we were testing the thing, Thatcher's gone. Oh, that's no surprise. As we were testing the thing, they actually put Dez's prediction rate at 0. I think they could just probably keep that from production.
I think it'd be really funny if he's wrong, because he... oh, wow, okay, we're getting some...
Thatcher's the first one
rudeness
gone.
across the studio.
That's familiar. That's like that warm jacket that you put on at the end of a long day now. Capitao gone as well. Again, pretty common for Xavier. 2, you're looking at Cafe. You're looking at those tight, narrow passages. You're looking at the kind of breaking across the top floor. Obviously, the old traditional take on this for the first 2 floors, the top 2 floors even, is to break in towards the cigar side, is to break in towards the top of red stairs, and then go from there. Capitao, obviously, he's a big help.
The interesting thing that you have to remember about that as well is the fact that when you've got a player like Chloroform on the side of FAV, who takes on very much that flex role, he plays the Capitão a decent amount. If you can deny that to him, especially being that player who's really stepped up of late on the side of FAV, then that could make Xavier's life a little bit easier. When Mai's obviously joined there as well, it almost kind of negates the need for that an original ban, because obviously he's a really big counter to the Capitão, and finishing things out there with the Maestro.
That makes sense. Maestro, I don't know if it's just me, but swinging that Alder around on this map, there's so many fantastic
You like to
positions.
swing your Alder around too?
Swinging the Alder around Dostoyevsky and seeing what results out of the end of the bullets as we go into the first round of the first game of this fantastic show. Reading room and fireplace, we're going to set ourselves up for the pace, not starting with a familiar bar on the top floor. One thing as well with the Thatcher, I don't know if you find it too much in this region, and you'll have to correct me here, little Miss Expert,
Okay.
is how locked in does bar become? Because what you often see is when Thatcher's off the board, kitchen even becomes a fortress for teams to try and penetrate, and it really takes some decent shield play or some very coordinated vertical to even begin to crack that egg.
Well, here's the thing that you have to remember, Fluke, is this is APAC and there are no rules.
Okay.
No, I mean,
Awesome.
these have been, especially when you look at FAV, it's one of the more coordinated teams that I think you find in APAC, especially of late, as we've looked into the second phase. So it's something that you would see a little bit more than be able to coordinate in situations like that. And actually just having a look back on, you know, they're going to be starting off here on the defense. They have played this site a grand total of twice.
Oh.
They've won once and they've lost once.
It's very often the tertiary. It's for a lot of teams, it's their
Yeah.
third place. But to be honest, one of the things that was cited by our fantastic analysts was that you're kind of looking at teams that like to hide things until the very end play days. Teams that really, they're burning, they're running on surprise, or they're waiting until the very end. Talking of surprise, here's the dance of spawn peekery. Is it going to lead anywhere? No, no bites, because it's very well predicted. And talking of, there's a shield, and he is slowly making their way through.
Well, I mean, we've got shields on both sides here, because Shin on the side of FAV is also going to be rocking the Clash. So this is a very APAC thing as well, Fluke. They like their shields very much, and when we look back at certain games, especially that Xavier played on Clubhouse particularly, we've seen that kind of clash of the shields come out before. Clash, no pun intended. And obviously also you have to bear in mind as well that the Echoes there, FAV have actually got a decent amount of intel on their side. They've also got this C4 ready to go. Placing that there on the hatch is actually super interesting because he knows, of course, that the player's going to want to come in. And there you go. That is straight away your Maverick deleted as he begins to open it up.
Well, Afro is one of those players where you kind of looked at the stats going into this, you looked at seeing what he can do, and now we're getting like that taste of it. We're getting the example. A quick drop down to the top of the red stairs there as they start to try their assault. As I said at the very beginning of this, this is the familiar way of pushing towards this middle floor. As you get control of the top, you make sure you've got all that verticality, all of that huge play space, and obviously the big important hop over towards pillars under your wraps, and then you go from there. Unfortunately, losing your Maverick and your Xavier very early on isn't the best way to kick this off. Scatman's going to wait and not know of Afro just sitting below as they play a very dangerous form of building a totem, and Red Sun's going to give the call almost instantly to the Hibana, you assume, and then from this you would expect to close down. There is an Echo drone not too far away on the shoulder though, so he's far from alone.
There's so much less support there for the Monty as well, as you lose 2 of those players so quickly and jumping straight in. We spoke about Scatman making a load of these crazy jumps, not with a shotgun this time, but he still was able to bring Afro down in the endeavor. Valkyrie gone, and that's also your top player on the side of FAV Gaming. Just a minute left, and Xavier are going to push into the site.
You can see the Clash has rotated back down as well. It's going to be the battle mano a mano with shield to shield as they just try and stem the flow of bodies into reading room. They're trying their best to dissuade whatever anyone wants to do on this doorway, but obviously with the charges going from the Xavier, it's going to make getting through this Clash a little bit tougher than it otherwise would have been. And with only 40 seconds left on the board, he's just going to try and force and man mode his way in to the building, goes for the melee and goes for the legs, but can't quite land it. The cover is there. Chloroform with DCH picking up a quick trade and hiding in the corner. Scatman from nowhere has swum this round into a 2 versus 1, all down to Shin, and no one left as Xavier lock in that first round.
And I was thinking, Xavier, they lost a decent amount at the start there, and so many of those members of FAV looked safe on the site because you had the Clash there, they had that distraction. Well, as soon as that influx came in there for Xavier, and suddenly you've got 3 of those players going down very, very quickly. Shin left on his own. There's only so much you can do, and this is one of the things that we expect to see from Xavier, is this incredible aggression that the team are able to bring out. We spoke about DCH at the start, and he was really the opener in that altercation there. But when you've got everyone else behind him together, they can be unstoppable.
So the swap there, the Clash is the bait and switch on this bar hold now as Zafir goes to Zafir. Probably concerned about the Clash, to be fair. They did, they hesitated. They hovered over a couple of different tastes and then went, nah, probably Zafir's good here. Obviously, I think one of the things that you could cite a little bit too, as you said, they've only really played reading twice across everything that we've seen so far. Having an idea and making it run, and then having the backup plans and making those runs, it's something where, yeah, you can test, you can scrim, you can prep, you can practice, but when it comes to game day, those little holes, those little kind of advantages that other teams can find and put pressure on, you don't really know how leaky your boat is until it's being filled with bullet holes. And unfortunately, there was a very big leak in the corner of that hole.
Just a bit. They went sinking down just like the Titanic. And the thing is, they mentioned on the analyst desk at the start there that FAV Gaming do have a defense that is significantly weaker than their attack. And it's something that we did see on the last play day of stage number 1, and how Xavier were able to just pull apart those tiny little cracks in the armor. So whether or not they'll be able to do that again this time is the question, especially as FAV have changed up significantly how they're going to be running the defense. We've got the Oryx and the Castle, of course, so they're going to have to expend a lot of that utility to get through those barricades and obviously give away a lot of their position in the process.
Now, obviously, prepping that castle with the 11 hit is going to make any kind of surprise motion towards the cigar push or on the opposite side and towards Piano very, very quick into the punch. They're looking for a burst of aggression against what Xav might be able to offer. They're going to kind of say, well, here's a bit of space. Take it. Oh, ha, 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 you've fallen for my ruse. As they swing round and pepper them with any bullets that they can get a hold on. At this point, though, what we've seen from Xavier is even when they're 2 bodies down and slightly a step out of rhythm with the pace, they're able to swing motions back into their favor. Whether it's from the kind of start of the push here with Red Sun on the Muncie, which seems yet again to be leading kind of the motion, or obviously the intelligent fragging of DCH. Either way, Xavier have a backup plan, and it seems very good at just being able to pop it at the drop of a hat.
I'm very intrigued by this positioning here in Cigar. Obviously very aggressive here from Shin and number 2, and that's why we're seeing Shin having to change his position, but it's going to be Taipon opening things up with the kill onto Onigiri. Once again, that's your Zafir gone, and actually make that the Oryx 2, and things even out here for the man count.
It was a very bold play, bringing the Oryx as the intense counter to Monty. They tried to bait it, but unfortunately the ever-watching eyes, well, they were watching. Afro's able to get one more back into their favor and bring it back to a 3 versus 3 as they keep just a bit of a hold in terms of the actual floor itself, and there's still a lot of work left to do here for Xavier. This is obviously the standard first site to be held. It's a very strong, stoic bit of masonry that becomes quite tough to start to dig through if you really want to find a comfortable, confident plant spot without, well, as you see, all of these many, many tight cross angles, all of the openings across the center. It's a crisscross maze of death, and unfortunately not even DCH can find full comfort here yet.
Well, they are trying to open up the wall there so they can head on in towards Piano, because They know they've got to move around that way. They have the Monty in the way to try and prevent this potential crossfire and this angle that's being held by Afro across the bar. If they can make their way around, especially as they know someone isn't there. But DCH is actually making the plan in the process, but he's going to be taken down by Afro.
Now it's just a little bit of hurried movement as Maverick tries to finish some artwork he did before, but unfortunately, well, he still put on a couple more pounds in this quarantine. Looks over to the corner of, as the push towards White Corridor goes, and the grenade is going to not quite land, actually. It bounced back. Monty's in the smoke, sticking the shield as best he can, but it was caught as the close push comes in. It's all down to the Maverick, who couldn't find the alternate angle. Swings onto one, but it's a frag game now in a 2 versus 1, and there's nowhere left to go. FAV bring it back to level pegging.
2 of those attempts there to be able to get the diffuser down, and both failed. FAV Gaming's very aggressive defense at the start was a big risk, and they lost both of those players who were playing in Cigar. It's something that we have seen in APAC before, where players have chosen to play in front of castle barricades, where if they don't get taken down, they don't have a rotation that you would otherwise have available to. And that is what they had there. They had to play in there, and they had to go for those aggressive plays, and it didn't work out for them. But as soon as Xavier then tried to move on forward, the push in from FAV, or not even, it wasn't even a push in, it was just their ability to gun down those players who they needed to get, i.e. the people planting the diffuser. They made it work. And then suddenly you've got to go for another attempt to plant the diffuser, and you've got fewer members on your team who can provide that protection, who can really do much about it. You use the smokes, but smokes won't save you from bullets.
Yeah, it's the thing I said there is obviously, even though they were in an even count, it was a 3 versus 3, the masonry, the kind of angles that you can play on your defense really work in the defender's favor in the situation. You can dig into the back corners, you can look for the long crossfires, obviously, from the opposite balcony on the far side. You can find a way to begin to really apply pressure without having to be in the situation where we could see the Maverick tried to alleviate some of the pressure, stem the flow and the bleeding, and try and put pressure on the White Corridor running along the spine of the entire floor, but in the same breath couldn't make it. They tried to do everything in the last seconds, and unfortunately it didn't work the same way it did in the first round. Talking of aggressive lead-in, here's Valkyrie opening up some windows and looking to try and get some external Valks. I only say on the fact that she's still got 2 in pocket.
I have to say, I think the last round was almost the confidence boost that was needed for FAV, because obviously they've come back to the same site they went to at first. They're bringing the same operator lineup. They're probably going to go for something incredibly similar to what they did play before. And I think they felt confident on that first round. And to be honest, it took us by surprise that Xavier were actually able to pull it out, because it was such a sudden rush at the end that secured the kills they needed. Well, after that last round, where things went a little bit better, evidently they feel ready and prepared to be able to take Xavier on in this 3rd round. Now, you mentioned Afro still holding on to 2 of those, 2 of the Black Eyes. He's still got 1 with him, and obviously he's not going to be playing under New Hatch ready for the C4. Don't want to give that away, but does mean that, well, I was going to say the Maverick is still alive. They don't have a Maverick this time. It is that sledge, of course. Yeah,
they've opted for a slightly different prod and push, but that's a very dangerous ring around the rosies Afro is playing right now, and usually it just leads to oh-nosies. More drones are being dropped, and actually just going to nope out of there, and I think that's the right decision. You don't want to be caught unawares entirely again. They've struck very, very well at the beginning of things, but this hefty information game that Xavier's bringing right now it's kind of a double-edged sword. You're looking at, yes, you're learning, you're pushing, you're prodding, you're playing the defenders away from where they were originally, Valcam in the middle of the floor, but in the same breath, now obviously you've lost loads of drones, you've lost a lot of utility, there goes another one, and at this point Valkyrie's just trying to do drone stats because it's really feeding well into that MPX.
And it's also over halfway in through the round here, and a lot of these players from Xavier are split up. Have the players upstairs. Onagiri is actually going to start moving downstairs now, as just DCH remains. Not quite going to be able to spot out the Clash there. There's the drones being thrown in, and obviously Clash can't do anything about it. And this is where they start to sneak in through the rotate. Can't shoot in through the shields quite like that. And Shin, of course, does have that rotate available should he be required to head back towards the site.
That's the worry, though, because that ground is also heavily falling into the favor of Xavier right now. If they can twin this push, as we know they are capable of, they might be able to make some bits out of that Clash, just as they did with that Jammer. Now it's the open hole that they were able to push and apply a pressure for before, which arguably won them the round. There's the Clash, suffering at the hands of the many guns that decided to go against there. It was a bold play, and the amount of time wasted, I guess it could have played very well into that. The quick trade comes out towards the side with Scatman and Afro taking one apiece, and now it's just trying to find your way inside. Last time it was a sneaky maneuver that came off, but number 2 is trying to make sure that doesn't happen again. A quick swing round, still buried on the top floor with the doubling up here of the Jaeger. In the meantime, Scatman is just going to put the diffuser down. It's a 2 versus 2. They know that they're planning at this point to bring on the round and keep it going. We're in a post plant for the first time today, and one down. It's a 1 versus nobody. There is a fantastic clutch from FAV. Number 2, as I said, he was waiting upstairs, baiting, patient, took the drop, ran a risk, and paid out.
Number 2, the highest rated player in all of Japanese Pro League Season 11, who really needed some time to figure things out. Hasn't necessarily shown up in the APAC North Division as much as we would have liked. And it's looking like he's actually starting to make a name for himself a little bit on the board, especially as Afro is obviously playing very aggressively at the start. And so that means he is ending up in a lot of those early engagements, some of which he hasn't been able to win out. And they were saying on the desk, we need somebody else on FAV to be able to step up and be there with Afro. You need someone who can do that job towards the late round if Afro's not around to do it. If number 2 can keep this up, then regretfully, maybe Derry's prediction isn't going to be so wrong after all.
Let's see, I guess. Crazy. 2-1, FAV currently one step ahead, as you see those fantastic chibis demonstrating and helping illuminate the point. But it's obviously early doors, early days. We're a long best of 3 ahead of us, and a great experience to obviously see who can kind of push the endurance difference between these two teams. Obviously, the taste of flavors of these maps that we've seen haven't been the hugest demonstration. FAV, we've seen it twice throughout this, a 7-2 win and a 7, I think it was 2 wins, I believe, they've had across Cafe. We haven't seen it from Xavier, I believe. We haven't seen it from Xavier, so it's generally fresh territory for them. So obviously, it's one of those maps that it still statistically plays into the defense for a lot of teams. You're looking at these bans as well and how they can play around the teams, and it becomes something where it builds better for them.
So FAV have beat Talon Esports on Cafe 7-2, but they lost against Cloud9 3-7.
Okay.
So 2 of those Korean teams there. One of the things that I wanted to mention is I think it's really concerning here that Xavier so far haven't been able to pull it out on the attack, given that that's typically their best side. And on the game that they played against FAV on the last play day, it was the attack that brought them down.
Yeah, and I guess it's one of those things where you have this side that's cited for being so creatively aggressive and so dominant on that, it can become a bit of a headspace because, yes, okay, some teams are fantastic at their attack. They can really nail it and bring it on game day. But defense, historically on some of these maps, is ones where you have a little bit more leniency to be a little bit rubbish. Some things are less obvious under the microscope of mistake, and it becomes something where you get rewarded sometimes when you should be, and that can really dog down attackers. Talking of dogging down attackers, C4 works very well, as does Chloroform, just using his gun. The quick swing from Scatman gets the one buried behind Bakery, and now it's just a matter of seeing if they can get over the wall. In the meantime, Napew is, well, they're a little bit injured, it's fair to say.
Yeah, Napew's not doing so well. He will be able to shoot out that mute jammer, so that is going to give Scatman the opportunity to open up the prep wall if that's what he decides to. But obviously, the jammer sitting there behind the bakery wall is still going to remain for now. It's going to give them the opportunity to drone in, though. Only Afro is currently sitting on site. He's there on the pulse. Meanwhile, Shin not too far away. So they will be able to flock in should they need it. And obviously with a slightly weakened Xavier, just 3 of their players remaining, Napew with just a sliver of health, if they can win out in these potential gunfights, and this could be another round to FAV.
Yeah, they're looking at trying to find their way around. As I said, without Thatcher, this can become a little bit tricky to get through for a lot of teams. But again, there's no wall denial, so it doesn't matter too much. Sabana's going to start cracking open whatever eggs she pleases and seeing what omelette she can make, as Milosh probably judges it, because I've seen his Twitter. Looking for the close angles here against the hard destruction, but Pulse is going to be a bit of a surprise as DCH catches them on the close side rather than the far side, and that puts us in a 3 versus 2, though obviously with Napew still suffering on a flicker of health and a smoke still on the board. That is in no way comfortable for anyone to try to approach. Obviously, Chloroform has already used the C4 pretty well, but it leaves them with just guns as their aid to try and stop this push and this swan into the kitchen service door.
Xavier playing very cautiously, and you can see them getting out the drone as those pings come through. And the remaining members of FAV Gaming know that they don't have to worry too much. Scatman is going in for the plant, and that's going to mean Xavier have to move on forward, and if they can't catch out in the gunfights, as ZCH proves with those final 2 kills, then it is a round that does go to Xavier. FAV looked pretty in a good position there, but as soon as they had to move forward with the fear of the diffuser going down, that was when Xavier were able to take the advantage.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I said at the very beginning is that I love to see on that site is a little bit more verticality, is having the angles locked down from above. You see it fantastically in Latin America. You see some EU teams very dominant with it, and they can control large choke points on the site just from being above it, and it forces the attackers to have to do more. And if we're looking at where Xavier is struggling so far, it has been on the timing on the roam clear. They're leaving a huge amount to droning, a huge amount to finding out that initial intel. As I said before, the drone work is going in heavily, and then they lose a drone, and then they send in the other drone. And it's a continual process of we're learning, we're pushing, we're shepherding. Okay, now we have 40 seconds left.
I think that's a really noteworthy point, because Xavier are very good at being able to take on these fights when they have the time to do so, when they know there's a lot of players. If you put 5 members of Xavier in a room with 5 members of whoever in a room, Xavier can take that fight, right? They know they can.
Yeah.
But the problem that they're having here is they don't necessarily know who they're going against and where from. So they are spending a lot of time sending out these drones. They're continuously getting taken down. They're not going in from these multiple angles. You mentioned that verticality. They didn't choose to go in through Fireplace, and so they're heading in just through Bakery, and that really makes it quite two-dimensional. And obviously it worked out for them before, but they're going to have to prove it again here on Bar as they head on up. And FAV Gaming, they've made a couple of changes as well.
Yeah, and it's good to see the adaptation. Obviously, I'm curious, they're going for their locked-in cigar hold with the 11-punch castle yet again. We saw it, I'm going to say picked apart quite quickly, but how much of that was the bravery of a man charging a shield under an open hatch, and how that started to pull apart? Either way, FAV have gone, yeah, let's not try that again. Let's go back to something a bit more familiar. Let's not try the surprise tactics, which, to be honest, from them, they're a very reliable team. They're a team that they know what they want to run.
Well, I mean, one of the also notable things here is Xavier aren't bringing the Monty anymore.
No.
And so that means actually we got the Warden to look through smoke because they were going for a smoke plant last time. Where are the smokes? Oh, wait, hold on, they are nowhere.
Yeah, it's a very quick and aggressive potential lineup here. 4 frag grenades. They know what they want to try to do, and it's going to blow up all of the players from FAV Gaming and any shields they decide to use. We've also seen, obviously, a fair bit of bulletproof camera before, and that's kind of, again, the swing on information that FAV have done. They've been creatively aggressive in that they're setting themselves up with these holds and doing things like that. But in the same breath, they have these shields to fall back to if they need to. They have this familiarity that they need to go to. And the last time we were up here, that's what took them the round.
That does also mean that if they do want to open those castle barricades, they can't just do it with the Caber anymore. They're going to have to use something like the lifelines there from Napier. And we've actually seen the Zephyr, historically so far in this game, go down very, very early on the side of Xavier.
Yeah, it hasn't really been able to have the impact that you could have from a Zephyr. Whether it's unlucky moments that sometimes do happen in this game, or whether it's just they're trying to tip of the spear them, and they haven't quite found any consistency there. Well, another one falls. Red Sun, who hasn't quite been able to find his way into this game properly, obviously running some of the utility and the hard destruction. It doesn't mean he's inertly looking for kills, but at the same time, it's kind of the swing of things where you saw how taken by surprise he was. He waltzed straight in to Sagara, and we know has been a heavy hold from them before, as we see Warden run as far out of there as possible, and here comes the split push. A bit of attention was drawn away from the red landing as they knew that Zephyr was in, potentially wanted to try and spring this castle trap, but in the same breath, they now have a bit more control. This is where I cited they didn't have enough last time, and why it fell apart when they tried to get their diffuser down.
Much like last time, the mute did go down early, but one of the really crucial things is it wasted such a significant amount of time here. Less than 30 seconds remaining for Xavier to be able to make this push, and they're going against 4 players here of FAV. There's going to be the opening of the castle barricade, and obviously there is this control over on the west side of the map from Xavier already, but if you don't know where those shots are coming from, then Taipon's going to be able to gun you down. Less than 10 seconds, and it's really looking desperate here for Xavier.
With Scatman the only one left alive and no time to do it, well, unfortunately can't get any further than that. The time is disappearing through the fingers of the attackers, and even with the drone work, and even where they're throwing themselves into this intel, they're still being taken by surprise. Twice they were taken by a man just hiding in a corner with a gun.
I mean, it's like, so he runs into washroom, Type 1's in there, he didn't know he was there. Oh, it's almost as if they didn't have drones to do that because they either lost them all or they didn't have time to use them anymore. But even when you just go back a few tens of seconds or whenever it was, when they actually made it into Cigar, the mute jammer was there, but they didn't know it was there until he turned around and just happened to spot it on the floor. And it's just these kinds of things. It's like, you should know where these things are. You shouldn't have to be walking into a room and just spotting something. Whether it's a person or a piece of utility, you should be prepared for that, because especially in this current meta, the current way of playing, you can't afford to be wasting time you don't have. Because you've got to be expending everything very, very efficiently. And that's not happening here. And I think another really kind of important thing is we're seeing someone like Red Sun going down very early. He's been able to get a decent number of plants for this team in the past. He's been very good at planting, actually. That's one of the reasons why Xavier have had quite comfortable attack rounds before, and he's getting shut down super early in this. It's like FAV knew everything they had to go for.
Yeah, and I think this is a very well-played game from FAV so far on their defense, because what they're doing is they've read Xavier. They're able to apply the pressure on this opener, whether they've just dug themselves in aggressive, unusual, locked-in positions. They're letting themselves go, this is where I'm holding, because what I'm playing against is the time. The clock is gone by the time Xavier have to push and have to try and close down, and that is not something that they're very good at, unfortunately, today. It's something that isn't quite landing. Setting themselves up now as they go for that final attack approach. Obviously the shift is the Hibana to the Thermite. Scatman's picked up. And, well, the C4 doesn't catch Red Sun this time.
I saw him throw it and I was like, if this works, and it happens a second time. But no, Red Sun knew better than that this time. Afro going for it a bit early.
Type 1 was just lying down. He's having a bit of a break. I think he got hit through one of the windows, went for a spawn peek, and was able to crawl himself to safety of the Clash in the bathroom and said, help me, Clash, I need you. Now they're back, and now they're able to dig themselves back in onto White Corridor and wait for anyone to try and push up the staircase. Again, it's the verticality that's going to become an issue. Clash playing on this connector. She has a bit more support now. The hatch itself is locked off. They're not going to alleviate any of that as a close push into the kind of heavy heart of the site, but in the same breath, they're a team with a lot of utility to break that open. They've gone down to only 2 frag grenades this time, though.
Oh no, only 2. Well, we'll see if they're going to be able to actually use them pretty well. It's going to be one of the breach charges. They're used by DCH. And if you can get another couple of those very efficient kills, then this could end at actually not too bad half here for Xavier. 3-3, I would say.
Fair split.
Yeah, absolutely not terrible. But obviously they've struggled against FAV on this site, or just on this half in general, to be honest. Interesting to see if Napew's going to be able to prevent rotations being made from FAV, but I would argue they haven't been doing it that much. Afro getting the opening kill, though, onto Red Sun. I said he was getting shut down so early, but Napew's going to be turning things around there onto number 2.
Well, I made a joke earlier about Dez potentially being the next James Bond, but Red Sun is trying to put in his own request, it seems. Well, there's a death to a Zephyr charge. Afro goes down, a good use of utility, and that's a big operator and a big player off the board. Falcon Echo gone. Big spews information, and now more just left to the Aether and the Ashes as they're trying to find their way down. The familiar wall is being cracked open, but there is still this Jaeger up above. Low health, so he can't take anything too major if he's looking for a long firefight, but with the bodies closing down and pinged on one side, might not know of the rotation possibility of DCH. There goes another one on the site, and it's now a 4 versus 1. It was Jaeger alone upstairs, and now it's Jaeger alone on the entire map. Finds one with a great bit of surprise, but Xavier's there for the 3-3 cover as we go to the turn of the half.
You mentioned Jaeger is alone upstairs, and my first thought was, yeah, but he's really the only one who has any kind of firepower in this engagement. You had the Clash, you had the Mute. Yeah, you can shoot with them, but it's not the same as having the Carbine. And then on the other side, you've got what? You've got the G8, you've got the ARX.
Ooh.
Oh, spicy. You know, the point is you had the team of gunners, 4 of them left, going against this significantly weakened Jaeger, and 2 other operators which aren't necessarily going to stand up to them in the same way. And I was thinking, in this instance, it kind of looks like Xavier have it. And they proved they have it. But now they're going to be moving onto the defense. And obviously, it is a time to potentially make some changes, turn things around. But both of these teams are attacker favored, both of them. FAV especially now are going to be running on their preferred side after having a not bad run on their worst side, whereas Xavier, I would have expected more from them on the attack, and I don't know if they're going to be able to hold it up on the defense.
Talking of people that are having pretty good games though, obviously Scatman 10-3, really kind of leading the charge there. DCH not much further behind, and they are, for me, obviously they're trying to bring themselves in and keep themselves into this game. When you look over to the opposite side of FAV, one of the ways you can kind of tell they're having a little bit more of a solid game is, well, the spew of kills is generally a lot more balanced. Each of them has had these moments of being able to swing into action when they need to, but the translation of that to their attacks might not always be the easiest thing. It becomes something where you really get to see who is having their strongest game and where it can really come to fruition in how they translate it on the turn of the half. Taking this kitchen site, taking the ground floor site, which we only saw once in the first half, and it obviously went into the favor of the attackers. They're comfortable here, they're confident here, they're technically 100% here, but look at this vertical hold that they've set themselves up for.
Right, I was going to say it really looks like Xavier expecting to deal with that. You know, they've brought themselves the Legion. That's going to make it hard to jump through something like a hatch. They've got this roam going on, but also FAV Gaming have prepared to do a vertical attack as well. They've brought Buck along. They're going to be able to open up the floors on the first floor so that they can shoot down into the site, apply the vertical pressure that way. If Xavier can make this roam work, then potentially they can weaken FAV enough before they get to that point that they can't actually break him through. This is a very messy attempt at a gunfight here, and both players are going to be able to get away from that with their lives. But you'd have assumed Afro could have clinched that one out.
I know. Maybe it's the spirit of Jess and me right now, because obviously she can't be here.
Hello?
But hello. Hot droning. Love it. As they saw the pressure coming in there. And this is something we didn't see too much of from Xavier. And one of the things we kind of chastised them about was they were doing a lot of cold droning. Droning ahead, trying to push, droning again. Yeah, and it didn't quite work because they got shot in corners they shouldn't have been. Whereas here, FAV, that was a combination of guns and aggression. It was a bit shaky, sure. But the pressure, the pings, what was being applied to the Valkyrie, that could have been locked down in a much tighter way if things had been a little bit more tighter with the control of the recoil. Always tough to do, though. Obviously, when you're just a little thing called, you know, a mini-major. Just a little thing.
I don't really know what that is, but Onigiri is going to be taken down there by number 2. And that means you begin to move on down. Obviously, FAV had to spend a lot of time trying to clear out that top floor there because Xavier had so many people off-site. Napew's got to be the next one, and he does bring number 2 down, but he's going to be able to deal with everyone else. He gets 2 kills, but is traded out at the end by Taipon, and that means he won't be able to continue on any further.
Well, a 3 versus 3, and they finally got some verticality under their hold. Now it's just a matter of, the actual site itself. They're looking for concern, and they're looking for fire that might possibly be coming from beneath, but as they steadily open as many angles as they can, we can see, obviously, DCH is being counter-aggressive. He's keeping himself alive, sure, but with a shotgun and an SMG, if he can get high and close, he can really take the legs out of anyone that gets, unfortunately, a little bit too dancy above the man. Maverick's going to start making his way in for the quick rotation here via Freezer, but there's DCH. He's trying to find every bit of aggression he can, and it might be straight into the hands of Maverick. With only 15 seconds and the diffuser now cold on the floor, that is the preparation we saw DCH trying from many different angles, and that's the aggression that has led very well to the favor. Echo is popping off in the background. Nomad is popped in the entrance of Kochek, and oh no, you are out of time.
That was straight into the groin right there, really aggressive. And I think one of the problems that FAV Gaming had was when they had to do things so late, like opening the wall, like sending in players from elsewhere, they didn't have enough people to provide the support. So suddenly you've got the diffuser on the floor on the other side of the map to everybody else. You had to spend such a significant amount of time doing that roam clear because Xavier did something that a lot of teams don't do, and that is continue having your roamers out and about after the 130 mark.
Yeah.
And they committed.
That's it. And to be honest, you know, on a site like this, as I've said, you can play against that still quite aggressively. When you're above it, you can utilize it, as we see in Latin America, very well as the round is kind of in that dying throes. Okay, when things go wrong, you're in a bit of a tight spot, and it becomes very, very hard to try and bring that back into balance and bring that back into your favor. But hey, for Xavier so far it's worked. They're playing a mix of this time game versus what we've already said they are very good at, which is gun skill, which is the ability to put bullets into bodies. The fact that FAV are obviously looking at this dying 5 seconds and swung onto coat check to try and get that kill before they went onto the site, I guess is one of those decisions where at that point you've got less than 10 seconds. You're not physically on site. The diffuser is cold somewhere on the opposite side as well, so you're not getting that. So why not just go and kill this dude?
Well, that's exactly it. Now, the interesting thing here is Xavier have actually opted to run pretty much the exact same composition that FAV did when they were on the defense on this site, bringing in the Clash, and that's going to be going up against the Monty of Taipan. But FAV are also bringing along a Ying. If I remember correctly, that's not something that we've seen so far today, but it does mean there are 4 smokes on the board. So we can expect something like a smoke plant. And of course, Xavier aren't going to be running a Warden or anything like that. So they're not going to be relying on being able to see in through the smokes. No bulletproof cameras on their side. But what we can rely on is Napew going for a very aggressive run out there. Black Eye gave him all the information he needed to know, and that will mean that number 2, the Ying with that second set of smokes, is no longer going to be around.
Well, here comes the crack on the top floor. Monty's back on the board in the hands of Taipan, and obviously we've seen this operator have a really great showing, have a slightly less great showing, and then disappear entirely. And let's see if FAV can translate some of the earlier days, the early vintage memories of Monty from this cafe trip first round. Obviously, again, if we're talking about pace and we're talking about time being wasted, this was a site where I quite liked the aggression that FAV brought to their defense, that almost external turtle towards the drop, because you know that they're only going to be pushing from there. It's very rare for teams to set themselves up along the many windows on the eastern side. It's a very tricky situation to play in. It doesn't offer you a huge amount of space. Here, well, we just see a man get his head cut off over the shoulder of Clash, and she's going to pick up her shields and try and be like, hey man, why'd you do that? That was mean.
That was so weird, because they must have known that the Clash was there. They didn't do anything about it. They just thought, let's go for some X-Kairos. Well, she doesn't even need to whip out her own gun, which she actually did end up doing, but someone right there can just run along and be like, all right, I'm going to get rid of those. Let's get rid of that player as well, and, like, bye.
See ya. One of the things that I get a little bit curious about now is because this is the first time we've seen a Ying on the board, and now she's not on the board. And how much of that was the strategy, and how much of that is now I guess we've got to see if FAV can kind of manipulate and change the space. Because if Ying's on the board, she is a big part of the strategy. You don't. She's not just a pickup for a G8. She's not just the kind of player in that regard. She is the tip of the spear, and she's dead.
She was dead very early on because number 2 went down because of the run out. And so straight away, Xavier were able to secure themselves that security. Not to use one word twice too much, but
it's all right.
They were able to get that security for themselves, knowing that that was going to be breaking apart the strategy.
Onigiri, hello. There he goes. There's Monty, and there's the surprise trap, and there's Jaeger taking a bullet in the face, but it doesn't matter because Scatman is there to find another 2 kills for his ever-increasing title and total now. For the first time, we have a 2-round difference and 3 in a row in the hands of Xavier as they find themselves creeping and careening closer to potentially locking this off.
Yeah, I have to say, I was a little bit concerned.
Were you?
Xavier going, yeah, because Xavier going into the, you know, I was a bit.
Okay,
yeah.
well, let's talk about it.
We'll talk about it later. Xavier going into their defensive side, I was thinking this isn't their preferred side. It's not the side we've seen them do the best on in the past. And meanwhile, FAV going onto the attacking side, that is the side we've seen them do the best on in the past. And I was thinking Xavier have kind of had their opportunity to show the best that they have.
Yep.
And I think maybe I thought a bit too soon because evidently they've looked quite comfortable on these 2 defenses so far. Now, obviously on that last one, we don't know how much of that success can be put down to the fact that the run out happened to secure arguably the most valuable kill.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can't necessarily, you know, if you're going for a run out, you just take what you can get.
I think well, that's it. Like, you go back and you're like, okay, well, I killed somebody from range. It's a bit harder to tell now, obviously, with the skills. But at the same time, in the same breath, oh, thank you, Stanton Y2K. In the same time and in the same breath, there was also something earlier that popped up from Heavens. The guy who does all the graphics.
I
want to take this moment
Shout out to
on
Heavens.
broadcast. Man, How does he make things look so pretty?
I don't know.
Give me your secret.
It's so good. I love it whenever he sends stuff to do with the graphics, and it's like, imagine having skill.
5-3. We find ourselves in Red Sun is picking up the mirror, and obviously if there was a site, well, I mean, you're looking at any site and you want to take it, but with the tertiary pick, with the third in the rotation, and with you looking at the potential of if you lose this, you're on match point for the rest of this game, FAV have to find something from this. They have to find some comfort, some solidity, because that last round, obviously they lost someone on the run out, but from then on, things kind of went from bad to worse.
You know what's bad to worse? I'm really upset. We're seeing some pulse shotgun, but look who it's not. It's not Scatman. That's not okay with me. He's sat there on the He's sat there on the red stairs as Capcan, the ranked warrior himself. Now, obviously, it could give him a great opportunity to be able to get some of these attackers. He's definitely going to be able to get a drone. He's actually moving down now, so no longer will he watch onto the hatch. But it does mean that he's not going to be there on the pulse shotgun, and I was looking forward to that.
Well, hey, it's the best of 3. We get that flavor, we get that taste.
That is so true.
That's the thing, and you're looking at obviously, we've got Oregon up next, and we've got potentially a little bit of Via.
What cheeky fella.
A bit later. So that's something where obviously we've got a full play day, a full experience to test these guys. And one of the things I said before is obviously if you're looking at a quick, aggressive burn team like Xavier, one that likes to pop hard and pop heavy, sometimes when you're looking at a long stretch of a play day, that can become a little bit weaker when you push yourself and you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And we see it from a lot of teams, so it's a bit of a distance race today. And obviously with two teams that even you guys in our fantastic polls couldn't really separate, well, let's see if they can find some separation here. Ying is alive and able to take the first kill. Unfortunately, Scatman is the victim, but Onigiri is able to take care of Afro with Shin taking a huge amount of damage. They just push around the corner, and that's a whole slew of blue in the top right there to put us in a 3 versus 2. Monty and Sledge, all that is left.
See, the thing is here, FAV knew exactly what they were going up against. They knew there'd be a wide roam from Xavier that would be on various parts of the map, so they just all decided to come in together. Now, you said the slew of blue. They were able to get those kills, just Typhon and Chloroform remaining. It's going to make it incredibly risky should they decide to try and put down the diffuser. Chloroform opening up the floor here. If he can see anyone, then maybe that'll give him an advantage. But obviously, Napiu is all the way downstairs. In goes that frag grenade. Not actually going to be able to find anyone just yet. And FAV are really biding their time before deciding to do anything.
Now, obviously, one of the things we've said about FAV was they're very good at reading how Xavier likes to play. And they've been able to kind of exemplify that in the push. The sneaky rotation round onto the plant here, they might not know that the drops come down, but now they're well aware. Could be because we haven't seen Cafe from Xavier at all. It becomes a bit harder for a well-prepped team to do, well, their prep. When you don't really know what the holds are going to be entirely. Yes, they scrim. Yes, they have VODs. Yes, they have other ideas of how these things can play together, but there is a massive difference to an up-to-date roster of information that you can really bring when you're obviously generally an information-driven team. They were able to pull stuff with their defense, with their strats being tested. Here, when they're trying to test the defenses of an unknown entity, it's unfortunately just coming up with the wrong results. You
actually make a really interesting point there. One of the big problems that Xavier was having on their attack was the lack of information. Their drones kept getting shot. But obviously you don't do droning in the same way on the defense, and they've been able to play these operators like the Echo, like the Pulse that we're seeing on the defense now. And I'm wondering how much of a difference that is making to their ability to be able to find success here. I mean, we look at the last 3 rounds, all of these defensive rounds for them, they've been doing really well on. They're on match point now. FAV are just sitting there with 3 points. Derry is rolling around on the analyst desk.
Rolling around on the floor.
He's crying, he's begging.
He's throwing his sheets in the air. Milos is trying to control.
He's just walked out. You know, he's walked out saying, I'm not doing this anymore.
Milos has gone after him now at this point.
They're going to cry together.
Yeah.
In the car park outside.
6-3. Match point we find ourselves on. I said it was 3 rounds in a row, now it's 4, and unfortunately the next one would make it not only 5, but the first map as well, something that has very quickly fallen into their favor here. And obviously when you look at where you're continuing into next, when you're looking at Oregon, when you're looking at a map where we have, again, a little bit more intel about Xavier, we've got 1 bit of experience, and we've got some in the same time of FAV as well. Both of them wins, both kind of close to the wire, wins a 7-5 and a 7-4 respectively. It's going to probably be a little bit more of an even battleground, I would say, in terms of when we see FAV on their attack, because the lack of information here, the lack of knowledge, is kind of building itself around this idea of let's go for Ying, let's go for these kind of quick strike pushes. We saw them obviously with only 2 men left try and sneak the diffuser in. It didn't unfortunately quite work as they were called out around the washroom area, but in the same breath, it's, you know, what else can they really do in this situation?
I think the interesting thing here is the fact, you know, they've gone down to the bottom floor, but what we saw before was Xavier having a very, very wide roam that's extended all the way to the top floor. But here, obviously, they're going for the clash. They're playing a little bit further down. Obviously, Onagiri's up here in White Stairs. He's just waiting, but it's not quite the same as it was before. So that means that FAV Gaming might not have that same level of time wasted and actually instead have to face those fights as they get closer onto the site. Now, obviously, they have decided to bring the Ying again this time, who hasn't gone down to a run out early. So we could actually start to see the strategy that they planned to use before get implemented. Shin won't be able to implement any kind of plan, though, because Redson's going to finish him off nice and early.
Well, now with the Clash playing aggressively on the backside of site where they wanted to set themselves up with the push, it's again going to take a little bit of a change of tact in the hands of FAV. Something where they're in kind of internally working against the grain here, and everything is coming down to how well they can adapt, how well they can learn and move at the same time. They're obviously learning, sure, but unfortunately with your Habana and your hard destruction going off the board at the very opener, well, now again you've got to completely shift away, because last I checked, all of that freezer wall was well and truly reinforced. There's no getting in on that entry. You've got to look for other ways to try and find your way through. The verticality and the pressure and the shepherding can really allow and alleviate some of the pressure and spaces inside the site, but there's still some very tight doors.
That's exactly the point I was going to make, is you run this real risk of getting bottlenecked because you also can't open the hatch above if you don't have that hard destruction, and they haven't brought Maverick with them like they did last time. You can see them all moving a little bit closer towards the site, and actually a lot of this setup down here on the bottom. They want to be able to get some of those opening picks to make it easier for them to move in. There go the Candelas as well as the smokes, but there goes number 2. No longer will the Ying remain alive as Red Sun and now Napew add on to the kill count.
Well, it's all slightly falling apart, but Afro is able to find a double in and amongst the backside of that. And with Chloroform off the board, he's going to have to find the ace to lock it down. But Xavier, unfortunately, for FAV, lock it down first. The fantastic opening round there from a team where, well, on their attacks, they didn't look quite as assured as they did on their defense. And that's a huge swathe of momentum they can carry across to map 2.
At the very start, it really looked like FAV had something on Xavier that they didn't before. And Xavier came back to prove that wasn't the case. Very similar to what we saw on Coastline on the last play day, where FAV got nearly all of the rounds on the first half, and it really looked over for Xavier.
I think it's one of the things as well, as we said, this is a big stage with the